Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
I'm Mike Booth.
And I'm Dan McLennan.
In this episode, we're going to delve into the retain list across the EFL and see if there are any players United should be targeting, while doing a review of the season and looking back at predictions we made last summer. Zach Clough for League 2 top scorer, anyone? Yeah, I think there's going to be a few embarrassed faces when we look through those lists that Mike very kindly went back and listened to. It's wildly optimistic, I think, is the best way to describe how we were feeling last August, isn't it? It's didn't quite turn out the way we hoped. How are you both doing, guys? You okay?
Yeah, good. It feels a bit weird. There's been no real football.
Yeah, kind of strange, isn't it? Really, not really having any games to look forward to or anything like that. Dan, are you ready for the big Brunton Bugle Bundesliga grudge match tonight?
Well, I'm sat here recording in my Hamburg shirt, so certainly. For those who don't know, I'm a fan of Hamburg in Germany, and Lee is a fan of Hertha Berlin, and they meet in the Bundesliga relegation playoff tonight. Hertha finished 16th, third bottom.
Oh, cocked it up on the last day again.
Yeah. And Hamburg finished third in Bundesliga 2, so they play off home and away. So they play tonight and Monday to decide who goes into the Bundesliga. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting one to say the least. That one, I think it's fair to say. I'm not overly confident going into it, if I'm brutally honest. But there you go. What can you do? Right. Well, let's get straight into the this week's episode. What we're going to do this week. It's not going to be as long as some of the usual ones. We're essentially going to go through the news. We're going to have a mini season review, basically, which hopefully won't last too long because there's not really a huge amount of positive to talk about from that, really. I think it's fair to say. We will go through our predictions and how bad they were, and then in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about some targets, aren't we? Really, we're going to look at who we could potentially sign over the summer, who we want to see the club sign. I mean, Paul Simpson may well go for completely different players. You never know, but it's just some, just a bit of fun and games, really, isn't it? Just to have a look through the list and see exactly who we go for. So let's get into it. And then news. First, a bit of news related to the podcast. Some very good news. The London branch have agreed to sponsor us for another season. So there you go. They've been fantastic this season, London branch. They've been sponsoring the second half of the show. They've got. It's open to all kind of fans of London branch. Got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston to Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East. And they regularly meet up on away trips, as well as arranging many social events, supporters games, and do a lot of fundraising for the club. They've been providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section over the season, and they'll be doing that again next season. If you want to find out more about London Branch, just go to the website, carlisle.londonbranch.org, and get yourselves signed up there. I think they've been telling us that they've had quite a few people signing up who've been listening to the podcast. That's fantastic to hear. So there you go. Thank you once again for their support all season, and again for next season. First bit of Carlisle United news then, lads. First trio of pre-season friendlies have been announced, haven't they, Dan? And it's no surprises who they're against, really, is it? The usual suspects, I think it's fair to say. So United are going to be facing Penrith, Kendal Town and Workington in pre-season. They'll open up the campaign. We presume they open the campaign. There might be some games before this. We don't know yet. But they'll open up on the Friday the 1st of July with 7pm kickoff against Penrith at Frenchfields. Then on the Wednesday, they travel down the M6 to face Kendal Town. That's a 7:30pm kickoff on Wednesday the 6th of July. And after that, they've got a trip down the West Cumbrian coast to face Workington on Saturday the 9th of July at 3pm kickoff at Borough Park. Not a massive surprise, really, is there, in terms of who they're facing in these games? Is it fair to say?
No. Paul Simpson sort of said, it's the right thing. I think it's something that he's bang on the money there, Local clubs, one or two loaned go to these clubs. It's always a good little money spinner for them. We normally take several hundred fans, and it sets them up for the season, And obviously, we play a lot of reserve games at Penrith, especially, don't we? So,
Yeah.
It's Workington's somewhere we often send one or two of the younger players. I can see that happening this season because we've got quite a few younger players already signed up, and a few games some of these clubs will maybe help them.
Yeah, definitely. One surprise maybe that they haven't announced a game against Carlisle City, because obviously Carlisle City are now playing at the same level as Penrith and Kendal Town, aren't they? Because obviously Kendal are in the North West Counties League this season, and Penrith are in the Northern League, but in the First Division, in the same level as Carlisle, who obviously got promoted over the summer. So maybe a slight surprise. It might well be that maybe they announce one for Saturday the 2nd, maybe split squads over those 2 games. They sometimes do that for the opening game, don't they? Just have one where the whole squad gets to play game one game.
Well, at this stage of pre-season, I'm not sure we'll have enough players to maybe be doing that yet.
At this stage, it's strange because it's obviously the season starts a week earlier this year. It's on the 30th of July, so there's not a huge amount of time between these games and the start of the season. So
plus, Paul Simpson has said he wants to get as many targets in for the start of pre-season as possible. I think he said 22nd of June, was it, from memory?
Yeah, so 22nd is the week before, isn't it? Oh, sorry, no, that's the week that they're starting. So
yeah, I think it's middle of the week, the 22nd, because I think they normally come in and have a couple of days where they do all the testing and a bit of fitness and check that they've adhered to their plans for the summer.
22nd of June is a Wednesday, so it's I'm guessing 23rd. I think is when the fixtures are out, isn't it? From what I remember, that fits in quite well, actually. So it'll be interesting. We also think there may well be a game against a Scottish side coming up, don't we? Because in terms of pre-season, that we hear there's going to be a pre-season training camp in Scotland, so possibly, but it's difficult to fit in, as you know, Dan,
I think if it is, it will be before the Penrith game, because Scottish League Cup is all through January, July now. There's the move to group fixtures, and some of the Scottish teams sort of use these as pre-season, the bigger teams, so it's hard to organise games against Scottish teams until that's been drawn, and there's always 5 in a group, so there's always one spare team. But some of them are a bit wary of playing friendlies once the fixtures begin, etc.
There could always be potentially like an old firm under-23 team who they're not a part of that, and it would maybe give us a chance to look at potential loanees as well or something.
Possibly. Or maybe even one of the Highland Leagues or something like that.
Say no to B-team football.
No, well, let's play Fort William away. That's the one we want to do, isn't it? There you go. Okay.
I have heard, the rumour is, unsurprisingly, we may play Sunderland at Brunton Park.
Oh, well, there's a shock. Sunderland or Middlesbrough was the tradition.
It's usually one or the other, isn't it? Yeah. That's not confirmed in any way, shape or form. It's just a rumour that's kicking about.
Oh, well. Other bit of news, new shirt sponsor has been confirmed. There was rumours swirling around, wasn't there, especially at Bradford away, that potentially it was going to be Story that were going to be the new shirt sponsor, but it's actually going to be Bimson's, who we've been sponsoring the back of the shirt last year. It's a local haulage firm, so fantastic. Them stepping up as well. I'm sure Thomas Graham will continue to support the club in whatever way they can with different sponsorship deals. So fantastic news ahead of the new season. There's a lovely photo of Simmo looking very excited in the cab of one of their trucks, pulling the horn the other day. It's I'm sure, Mike, something that you can definitely relate to. I think it's fair to say.
No, I never look that happy when I'm in my truck. That
many years have left you jaded, have they? I guess. There you go. So there's that. Josh Dixon, he's undergone his surgery, hasn't he, Dan? Basically, it looks like he's out till next February, I think, by the looks of things.
Long time.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? And bear in mind, obviously, his contract's up next summer. He wouldn't have that's it for him at Carl United, probably. But, good luck to the lad. Really hope he can come back and, at least get some games under his belt, whatever happens. But it's going to be tough. And third time round as well. Not nice at all. Not nice at all. Do we want to do a quick roundup about Dan in terms of a couple of fans forum and kiosk meeting bits?
Yeah, the club finally announced their directors forum, as the fans call it. where we, the public, get a chance to question those who make the decisions. It's on Tuesday night. They initially said it was season ticket holders only could apply because there's only 100 spaces. I would imagine it will likely go to general admission. It normally does. They usually screen it via Facebook or YouTube. Or I think it's YouTube was mentioned. But yeah, Nigel Clibbins, Suzanne Cade, John Nixon, Stephen Pattinson, and Billy Atkinson from Kiosk are the panel. So if you've got anything to ask, get yourself down, or I'm pretty sure you'll be able to email in any questions on the night. There's usually someone monitors for that. And speaking of Kiosk, they had their latest members meeting last week. I was there with one or two others. It wasn't massively attended, but some interesting discussions, some one or two new faces and ideas, and there was a full roundup in their email at the weekend, and also John Coleman was there by invite, and he's done a couple of articles on the various topics and discussions, so they're well worth having a look at.
Definitely. Well, follow that up just before we get on to the season review bit then. Let's just talk about very quick loan updates. So I'll start with the one who actually played, Manny Mampala. He started again. Final game of the season, he started Weymouth and they won. But it was Dover that they beat, so it's not really much to crow about, is it, to be honest? Dover finished on 1 point.
Big shout to Dover finishing on 1 point.
Yeah, that, to be fair, it's a hell of an achievement considering what a mess of season it's been for them.
And
so.
There were minus 21 points or something, weren't there?
Yeah, so it's actually get that high in the end. I mean, points-wise, actually, the number of points they got, they weren't that far off Weymouth from what I remember, so it's a bit embarrassing for Weymouth, really. So yeah, Weymouth finished with a 2-1 win. He played 82 minutes of that game, but that's the end of their season, the end of his time at Weymouth, the end of his time at Cal United, so he's going to be looking for a new club over the summer, and I'll be honest with you, I think he's going to struggle to get anything above National League North or South level, based on what we've seen, so there you go. Tristan Abrahams, he didn't actually play at the weekend. Grimsby were the 23rd team, if anyone doesn't know what I mean by that. It's basically the fact that National League this season is an odd number of teams. It's 23 teams rather than 24. So every weekend there's one team doesn't play, which must be quite infuriating if you are in certain situations. But they were not playing, but they didn't have anything to worry about. They'd already secured a playoff place, and they'll play against Notts County in the playoffs on Monday. I'm guessing that'll probably be live on BT Sport, I'd imagine, that one. So it might be worth a watch, see how Tristan gets on in that game. Two big clubs going for promotion there, isn't it? And obviously, we'll touch on it in the X-Files section, but Stockport obviously came up as well, didn't they, at the weekend? So fantastic to see them back in the league. Really, really good. Right.
Proper club.
Yes, proper club indeed. Let's get on to the season review. I mean, do we have to? That's the question, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to think back, isn't it, to last summer? I mean, we'll look at the predictions shortly, but just how optimistic we were, Mike, in terms of how we felt we could do. Because, I mean, we'd had a bad end to the previous season, but there was a feeling, wasn't there, that actually we could kick on and potentially get ourselves into the playoffs this season.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, signings like Clough and Abrams, like, it looked good, but it wasn't. So.
We've proven to the point there.
Their finishes the season review.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, yeah, it just wasn't great, was it? I mean,
it could have been quite good, but it wasn't.
No, absolutely, it just didn't go well. I mean, when you look back at the summer side, you mentioned there, Mike, that those signings, but I mean, Dan, when you look at it, we didn't actually sign that many players, did we? It was very sort of more or less stick with what we've got, and then obviously you had Lucas Jensen brought in as your backup for Norman. I know exactly.
The greatest signing in history.
Indeed, but then you also had, you had Corey Whelan come in, who looked a decent addition. Someone who'd done fairly well at Wigan alongside Zach Clough. Obviously mentioned Clough before, Abrahams, and Mampala was just seen sort of an extra squad player, wasn't he? But generally they've kept together what they had, and there was a feeling we could kick on, but when you actually look at it wasn't that great a summer in terms of transfers. It's amazing with hindsight, isn't it? But it wasn't as good, Dan, was it?
No. I mean, there was a bit of optimism, I mean, we had our various reasons for dropping away the season before, the COVID, the squad getting it all, etc. And there was sort of maybe we don't need too many additions, and we can push on with these additions, but didn't quite happen.
No, it was pretty poor really in the end. And I'm looking through the squad here.
Well, we lost most of the back five, didn't we? Really, because obviously Farman went, Hayden, Bennett, and
Tanner late in August.
Let's have a look at that August then. We actually look at it. The start of the month, we were unbeaten in the first 4 league games. When you look at it, we started out with that 0-0 against Colchester, followed up with a win at Swindon. Obviously, you've done really well this season in the playoffs, and then we had
Swindon were a mess at that time, though, weren't
they? They were, yeah.
They just pulled out of the mess. I think they'd just been taken over and signed.
I think they were a bit of a mess in terms of they were still trying to find their feet, really, weren't they? Obviously, we ended that month with that 2-1 defeat at Hartlepool, which wasn't a great performance.
It was awful.
Followed it up actually at the start of September for a win over Salford. So at that point, you're 6 games in, you've only lost 1 game, you've won 2, drawn 3. It's not looking too bad at that stage, is it really? You think, so you know what, actually, we could still do something here, potentially.
Well, I think Abrams scored something like 3 in his first 5 as well, or something, didn't he?
Some penalties in there, that's the one thing I would say.
Then we went to Sutton.
Sutton comes a few games later, but you look at that month of August, 2 key transfers out affected us, didn't they? Hayden and Tanner going. Hayden going on the opening day just before the first game. The fact that he missed that game was a big blow. And then Clough being injured, which was with hindsight, was a sign of what was to come. Mm-hmm. Losing Hayden before that first game, someone who not just important in terms of defending, but in terms of attacking set piece and stuff, made a big difference, didn't it?
Yeah.
We replaced. We all knew Tanner would go eventually because he was too good a player for our league, and we did sort of replace him in Calvin Miller. With solid enough player to this league. We replaced Aaron Hayden with Jonathan Dinzey.
That again.
No disrespect to Dinzey, could be a cracking lad and that, but battle-hardened League 2 centre-back, he wasn't. No,
he played that. He made 1 league appearance, didn't he? I don't think he quite count. Well, does he? In fact, he probably does count for the 1-game wonders because his only other appearances were in that competition we don't talk about. So, yeah, that game against Forest Green, he was started okay, but as soon as Jamil Mack got an idea of what he was like, we tore him apart. And you're right. Yeah, Mellor, I suppose, is a solid replacement for Tanner, but he was never quite as exciting or good going forward, and Tanner gave us a bit of dynamism doing that. And like I said, Hayden was just so... I know, again, we were the first club he actually started regularly for, really, but he looked ready for it, didn't he? He looked like a player who was quite happy to throw himself about and get involved in the physical side. And yeah, losing him, I think, was a big blow.
You look at that run of results through September and into October. We got beat at Crawley. We scrambled a draw against Scunthorpe.
And we were dreadful in that game. Really bad.
The Sutton debacle. Forest Green did us. Bristol Rovers, who really struggled early on.
Yeah.
When they hammered us 3-0 on the back of Sutton, that was when the alarm bells went, wasn't it?
Well, that's when he got sacked, wasn't it? It was after the Bristol Rovers game is when Chris Beach got sacked. And actually, looking at it, I thought the losing run was a lot worse. But actually, when I look at it, it was only, 5 games since that win over Salford? I know we had not played well.
Performances, really, wasn't it?
I think that's what did it for him.
The lack of ideas and...
Yeah. And I suppose when you look at it, we'd actually only won 2 games at that point in the season, really, and we're 11 games in. That's the bit that stands out. But actually, it was still early days. But there was a feeling that he just didn't know what to do, was there, really? And that when you look at that Bristol Rovers game, that was one we could watch on iFollow, wasn't it? And I think everybody afterwards, it was just an eye-opener to like, oh God, we are in trouble here, aren't we? And it was tough. But obviously then Gav Skelton steps up at that point. Obviously, we should mention actually Jordan Gibson came in as well, obviously, in August as well. And I think he took his time to find his feet, but when he did, he really started to look like a player who could do something for us, didn't he? I think as well. And long term, he looks like a really good signing. That's one thing you probably give Chris Beach a bit of credit for. So obviously he goes, first game up, Tranmere. I mean, Tranmere were lucky to get a 1-0 win from that game. It was a very scabby game.
McDonald on goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we look fairly solid. And actually, you know what? For all the stick he gets, I think Skelton deserves a bit of credit for solidifying us in those games. And we were so unlucky that game against Newport. We could have won that. You know, I think we played actually some really nice stuff against a team that was, you know, pretty decent. And then against Oldham, the 0-0, obviously was a bit battling. They're a team down near the bottom, but he put us in an okay stead. And then came the Northampton game, which obviously is Keith Millen's first game chance. I mean, Keith Millen gets the job. I mean, we're going winding the clock back a bit here, Dan. What was your first reaction when you heard that it was him getting the job?
Different. Where's he come from? Who does he know? Because
who does he know is the key question, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Obvious manager? No, not by a long chalk. But as ever, you know, I mean, every player who comes to Carlisle or manager, as far as I'm concerned, they get a clean slate with me. I don't care what they've, you know, the one we always go back to. Tranmere fans thought Kev Gray was the worst player ever to play for them. You know, so, you know, it doesn't matter what you've done. When you join Carlisle, it's a clean slate for me. And I personally will only ever judge players on what they've done at Carlisle, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It's the best way to look at it. But yes, that Northampton game comes, and oh my God, we were dreadful that game, weren't we, Mike? I think it's fair to say. And then
but I mean, like, you couldn't put any of that on Millen with it, you know, his first game and all the rest of it. I mean, one thing I remember when he came in is because we didn't really want one of them names off the managerial merry-go-round, did we? So I was a little bit grateful that we went kind of left field, but I do remember saying at the time that I had reservations about his League Two knowledge. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately where we went wrong, really, with that appointment.
My mate Ian, who we all know, he said to me, "Gone by the end of February," and he was bang on with it. To be fair, you know, I was a bit like, it's a little bit harsh, isn't it? But then actually, when you look back at it, he was right, and the signs were there fairly early on that he didn't really get a grip of things quickly, did he? I mean, we went to that game against Exeter, and obviously for that game we were down to 10 men for much of that game, weren't we? And, you know, we battled away, and we very nearly nicked a point for that one. Me and you both obviously went to that. Followed up by the Harrogate game, and then the game against Walsall. We wondered if that might have been the turning point. Nicking a 1-0 win so late on in that game. What I should say, we haven't really sort of touched on the cup games here, but in round about this time, we had obviously the cup game against Histon, which I think was his actual first game. Horsham, sorry, not Histon. Horsham. And we weren't great in that game either. It should be said.
Well, we got the win, though, didn't we?
We got the win, but that again was another worrying sign.
I think a lot of that is you chalk a game like that down due to the level of the opposition. You know, there's always a bit of nerviness. You know, you don't want to be on the end of an upset. They're going to have the game of their lives. You know. Yeah.
So obviously, that Walsall game, we nicked that 1-0 win late on. Tristan getting the winning goal. And then we obviously lose 1-0 at Mansfield in the game after that, which actually was, to be fair, was a very tight game against a team that was pushing for a playoff position. I can't remember if they were down, struggling a bit at that point maybe, but they were, you know, they had big aims for the season at the very least. And then what came next was 3 wins in a row, and we thought, oh, finally, maybe things are clicking. Maybe things are starting to turn around.
There were murmurs of a playoff push, weren't there?
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember as well, in that time, there was a big gap. Actually, I've completely forgot this. There was a big gap between us playing against Stevenage on the 11th through to then playing again on the 1st of January against Scunthorpe. But these were all teams that were struggling near the bottom. And that's the one thing we had to sort of take a step back from, wasn't there, really actually analysing that way. We actually had a 5-game unbeaten run, should we say. We drew 1-1 with Crawley. Probably a bit lucky to draw that, and 0-0 against Hartlepool. Again, probably a bit lucky to draw that. Howard made some great saves,
but it was 11 points out of 15 in them 5 games. You know,
true. And you should say, well, you know, that potentially put us in a really good stead. Very quickly found out it wasn't the case. Should actually say, one thing we didn't touch on was the arrival of Mark Howard just after Beach was sacked. That Skelton clearly took a decision and said, well, we need to get a keeper in here to actually, you know, give us something to help us here. And he did make a massive difference.
And he was straight in the starting 11 as soon as he signed as well, wasn't he? Because we were thinking that he might just be on the bench, but we threw him straight in. And he took to it like a duck to water.
Did he not miss a game from that point? Or did he miss one? I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure he played pretty much every game from that point onwards. So
I think he did, yeah.
It's quite incredible. So yeah, we had that 5-game unbeaten run, but then that was followed up by a I'm trying to count here in my head here. I think it's 6-game run without a win, and that put paid to his chances of staying in the job. Millen. I mean, the 3-0 defeat at Forest Green. Both me and you were there, Dan, and we both sort of agreed that's just one of those ones, isn't it? Really, they're a decent side. We didn't actually play that badly in that game, but the Sutton game for a team that was, probably put together quite cheaply, but a very well drilled, very well organised, and played us off the park.
After that Forest Green game, though, he was making like wholesale changes, which he didn't need to do. Like you say, they were a good side. They beat us. It happens.
Well, Morgan Feeney was the scapegoat for that game because of his own goal, and we were on the angle. He had to put something on it. He would have been failing by not putting something on it, and it just happened that the force of the shot meant that it spun in,
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Dinel Simmo came in January, and those first few games he played, he was not great in them. I think it's fair to say he obviously came in for Feeney, and it just wasn't working at first. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really until obviously Simmo comes in at the end of February that his season turned around. And yeah, so I'm looking at the run of games. The only point we got in that 6-game run was against Colchester, and that was thanks to a late Toby Silver goal. The rest of them, I mean, the 3-1 defeat to Port Vale in particular, we were abject in the second half of that game. I remember I was actually up. It was a Tuesday night game, and I was just up for a few days, and I was going straight back afterwards, and Megan came to the game with us, and she was genuinely like, you go and watch this every week. Like, yeah, I do. It wasn't good. I mean, the Colchester game, I don't think any of us went to, but again, it sounded like a dreadful game between two poor teams, and then we've got to bring ourselves to the Swindon game, don't we? And Mr. McCurdy doing us a favour, and never be more grateful for a man being an absolute shithouse against us, really, will they? He tore us apart that day. Fair play to him. He had a great game, and obviously he's going to wind us up because that's the kind of person he is. I was trying to think of another word there, but I probably better not say it. And I think, Dan, have you been to a game with a more hostile atmosphere at the end towards your own team? Because I can't think of one where I don't know how to describe it. It just, the hatred towards everyone, including the opposition, in that game was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was starting to get, the vitriol level was massive. It was.
Yeah. It wasn't nice.
I'm trying to think of a word. There was a taste in the air, wasn't there? And it wasn't a nice one. And
I think, to be fair, I think sometimes you do have to give the owners credit. I think they recognise straight away this can't carry on because the players aren't going to enjoy playing this. We need to do something to change things, and the toxicity obviously wasn't just. I don't think people particularly hated Millen in any way. I think it's the fact that he was connected to. We're going to say his name for the last time this season, so there you go. That'll be one that'll be bleeped out, but because of his links to him, that was the reason why people just never really took to him and had to go. And they took a decisive decision and to bring Simmo in straight away without even waiting around. My word, did pay off.
Well, the announcements all came one after the other, didn't they? Because at first it was announced Millen was gone, and we were like, and then it was announced Holt is gone. It's like, and then it's announced Simpson comes back, and everyone's absolutely jubilant. And what an appointment! I mean, there was the cynic inside of me at the time was thinking they're doing it to appease the fans. He probably doesn't know League Two, just like Millen either, but regardless, he's a motivator, isn't he?
He knows the club.
He knows the club.
To be said for that.
And as well, one of the things that we didn't mention before is some of Millen's comments to the press. Sort of like, I can't remember it word for word, but he said something along the lines of the fans need to ignore what's going on off the pitch and just support us, kind of thing. And it's like, we've had to put up with a lot of crap over the past few years. You can't just tell us to put it to one side. Whereas Simmo came in and he's like, look, I know there's stuff going on off the pitch, but we've got 15 games. We need to stay in the Football League, and the other stuff can get dealt with after, kind of thing. And he just gets it, doesn't he?
Yeah, people will buy it from him, won't they? But there you go. What followed, obviously, with Simmo was, his first, I'm just looking at here, first 7 games, 6 wins. One narrow defeat against Newport County that could easily have been a win as well, or even a draw. So, I mean, that shows you how good it was. Interesting, obviously, looking back, that actually the last 8 games or so, we only got 2 wins from that. And there was 2 wins, 1 draw, and 5 defeats. So, it wasn't the greatest end of the season. But I think at that point, the squad that had been stretched so thin and players playing out of position really caught up on us, didn't it, really? And no one, I mean, other than Harrogate, no one battered us in those games. You know, a few 1-0, 2-0 defeats in there. But the 3-0 defeat against Harrogate is the only one that started us, really. That was a bad day. And you were at that game, weren't you, Dan? So,
unfortunately.
Sorry, you can remember that really well. But, I mean, some great moments in that spell since Simmo took charge. I mean, that's where all the good moments from the season you can pick out are, really, aren't they? Other than maybe the game against Bradford, obviously, where we won 2-0 and, you know, the goals from Gibson and Patrick. All the other best moments, really, since Simmo came in, aren't they? I think it's
all the last-minute winners, last-minute equalisers, you know, all the rest of it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, let's have a look through our predictions then, shall we, lads? This doesn't make good reading. Let me load this up here. So, starting off, let's look at the league predictions. I mean, some of these aren't entirely correct yet because obviously we're still waiting on the playoff winners to be confirmed, but we can go through some of them, can't we? First up, champions. I went for Forest Green Rovers, so thank you very much. I will 100% take all my credit for that. Dan, what did you go for?
Tranmere.
Yeah, not the best pick, that one, is it, really? I think it's fair to say.
Disappointing season if I was a Tranmere fan.
Really, really big letdown.
Finished 9th, just off the playoffs. But
I'd fully expect them to be a lot stronger next season. I really would. I think they'll be a tough team to beat, I reckon.
Especially with their defence.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, who did you go for?
I went for the bookies' favourites, Salford.
Never trust a bookie.
No.
That's what I always say. But yeah, again, another team has had a bad season, haven't they, really, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things.
Just sat the manager, haven't they?
Yeah, then it's just Billy Barr obviously losing his job at the same time. I should save that for the X-Files so you could have enjoyed that, Dan. Promoted, I went for Tranmere and Salford, so I don't know why I'm crowing about your 2 choices because I was wrong on those.
I went for Forest Green and Salford.
So you got one of them right in terms of promoted.
I went for Forest Green and Bristol Rovers.
Oh, fair play, Mike. Getting Bristol Rovers, and that as well, that looked like a terrible prediction earlier in the season. So you can thank Scunthorpe United for that one, I think it's fair to say.
Well, yeah.
Playoffs, I think it's fair to say none of us
We
did.
all said us, didn't we?
Yes, we all said us, so that was wrong.
And we all said Bradford as well.
We all said Bradford again, that was wrong. Dan and myself went for Mansfield, so that's correct. They were in the playoffs. They were in the final, actually. They've done really well. We both, but then I went for Walsall, which, you know, yeah, they finished.
And I went for Orient.
16th, and Orient finished 13th, so not great. Mike, you went for Port Vale.
Yeah.
Lost in the playoff semis, but no, not a bad shout. And
Newport.
No, they haven't lost. They've got a game to play.
Oh,
tonight.
sorry, I've completely mixed them up with Northampton. They obviously lost the game. I do apologise. Looking into the future here. So there you go. So we're pretty much on equal standing at the moment, I'd say, other than maybe argue that Mike's slightly ahead for getting Bristol Rovers as well.
Can we get on to relegation?
Yes, come on then. So relegation, I went for Rochdale and Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe, not a bad shout. Rochdale, in the end, got in 18th place. They pulled themselves away. They looked in trouble towards the end, though. They started to slide. Mike, you went for Swindon and Oldham. I mean, Oldham, of course, you got right. Swindon couldn't be more wrong if you tried. So go on then, Dan. Who did you go for?
I got 2 teams that you both said, but I put them together and I said Scunthorpe and Oldham.
So annoying that, isn't it, really? You get them together, but there you go. Really frustrating that. But
and I think I also said Barrow would be in the mix from memory.
I think you did, yeah. I seem to remember you said that. I mean, you were absolutely desperate for them to be in the mix towards the end.
Well,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Okay, Dark Horse, a team we expected to do well. Well, we were all terrible at this. I mean, Dan, you went for Orient, which is probably the best of the bunch. Me and Mike both went for Stevenage, who finished 21st. So yeah, not great. Unexpected strugglers. I mean, Dan, you went for Bristol Rovers.
Well, I went for Bristol Rovers, and let's be honest, till the turn of the year, I was right.
Yeah.
Because they were terrible. But fair play to Joey Barton. He turned them round, and second half of the season, they were probably the best team in the league, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if you replicated their form over the whole season, they would have won it by a canter as well, I think it's fair to say. So I went for Northampton. Yeah, it's just as bad as yours, really, in that sense, because they finished just below them. Mike, you went for Tranmere. I mean, didn't really struggle, but they did.
No, I mean, I think the words, it wasn't unexpected strugglers. I
here
think
we
the
go.
words were team that people think will do well, but they won't. And I wouldn't have expected them to struggle, but I just had reservations about where their goals were coming from.
Yeah.
And that obviously, came to the fold.
Yeah, it's fair to say. Okay, top scorer. Dan, who did you go for?
Clough.
Yeah, okay, less I know that one, the better. Mike, you went... Yeah.
Hark at you.
Well, I bet he scored more than Zach Clough. I went for Danny Johnson. It didn't do quite as well as we'd hoped. I'm looking through the list here and I can't actually see him listed anywhere, so he must be quite low down. In fact, let's look at Mansfield because he'd be listed there. Mike, you went for...
I went for Brett Pittman.
How many did he score?
I don't know.
Which probably tells you all you need to do on that one. Danny Johnson got 4, so he still scored more than Zach Clough, so I'm taking that one. I'm trying to see if I can find... Who was he playing for? He was for Bristol Rovers, wasn't he, Brett Pittman?
Yeah, he scored 4 and then was loaned out to Eastleigh.
All right, well, fair enough then. I think we're going to be quite level here, because I'm going to have a quick look and see how many Zach Clough scored in the end, because I can't... Was it 4?
Zach Clough scored 2 in the league and 1 in the FA Cup.
Well, there you go. So if it's 3, basically. So yeah, we just narrowly nipped that one, but there you go. First manager sacked. Dan, you didn't answer this one. Chickened out on that one. I went for Neil Cox. I don't think it was Neil Cox. Who was it in the end? We should know this, really.
Was it Beach?
I will have a look.
I can't remember exactly who it was, the first one to be sacked. But yeah, you went for Gary Bowyer, Mike, who turns out it's the last one to get sacked. So, you're a bit wrong with that one, unfortunately. Carl United predictions, I mean, they're fairly... top scorer, Dan went for Clough, you went for Clough, I went for Abrahams. We were all appallingly wrong on that. At the end, it was...
to be fair, if one of us had said Amari Patrick, it would have been like, he's gone.
Get over it, we were really saying. But how could you predict that? Right. Play of the year...
Hang on, I've just got the managers up. The first manager to leave was Mike Flynn at Newport.
You would only
followed by Chris Beach.
Well, there you go. That wouldn't have predicted Mike Flynn, to be fair. So that's a fair dude.
And then it was Neil Cox and Dave Challoner.
Yeah. Play of the year, we all went for Clough. I think we can all agree it's probably Mark Howard. Continue flight the floor everywhere. Most improved. Wow. Dan, you probably got closer than me and Mike did, definitely. You went for Jack Armour. I mean, who would you argue is most improved? Morgan Feeney, maybe?
Well, for me, the whole Feeney thing was he didn't really play last year, and I think he's just been showing this year the player that he is. Rather than been improved per se.
Yeah, he improved across the season, you could possibly argue. But, I mean, I don't know. It's a hard one. I mean, you could argue Rod McDonald was improved on last season.
Most of our players weren't here a year ago.
Yeah, that's the problem you've got, isn't it? It's hard to say.
Well, I'm taking that one.
Yeah, you can have Jack Armour because it's what the nearest anyone's going to get to it.
He played 41 games in the league, so...
Yeah. Me and Mike said gimme, sorry. Right, we'll move on.
Sorry, what was that? What was that? I didn't quite catch that.
Gimme, sorry.
Give me 2 there, how did he?
To be fair, we had a bit of logic, didn't we? Because we were like, oh, he'll be playing in front of fans and they'll get him going.
Then Beach just decided not to play him.
He made 3 starts and 4 sub appearances all season for us.
Wow. Okay, fair enough then. I think that's pretty much it season review wise. We'll take a little break and then we'll be back to discuss a few targets and wrap up with the X-Files section.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Just thought I'd mix it up a little bit though. We've had John Mellish for a few weeks now, so
I wish we still had our George.
Don't we all? Right, okay. Just to remind everyone, you can subscribe to the podcast using all good podcast apps, whether that be Spotify, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and if you can give us a review on any of those podcast apps as well, that'd be fantastic. 5 stars is always lovely to see. Also, you can follow us on social media at Brunton Bugle on Twitter, same on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. Just search for the Brunton Bugle and click like, and you can find us on the Cummins.net message board and the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group as well. And also email us, bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Right. Okay, so let's do the section where we're going to look at some of the targets for next season, guys. So we've got a list together of what the squad is like currently. This includes players who haven't confirmed whether they're signing contracts yet.
Whoa. We've got a signing announcement coming.
Oh, have we?
Oh.
Carlisle United are signing a player.
Hello.
This is interesting while we're recording.
Well, this is terrific while you're actually recording a podcast app, isn't it? For God's sake. So, as we record it, we'll reveal suddenly later on who the new signings, and we'll try and get a little bit of very quick reaction on that. But anyway, so we've got a list of basically the squad. So, keepers, Magnus Norman, yes, we're still waiting, but it looks like he probably will sign that, we reckon. Scott Simons and Gabe Breeze, your keepers. Defenders, Joel Senior, Jack Ellis, Corey Whelan, Morgan Feeney, John Mellish, Jack Harmer and Max Kilsby. Midfielders, Callum Guy, Jamie Devitt, question mark obviously because he's going to come back for training. Brennan Dickinson, Taylor Charters, them two obviously waiting on the contract decision, so we think Charters has agreed it, we're not 100%. Josh Dixon, obviously out for the season, Lewis Bell and Jordan Gibson. And then strikers, Christian Abrahams, Toby Shea-Silver, Amari Patrick, Christian Dennis and Sam Fishburne. So, I mean, first up, it probably looks like we're going to need to at least get a right wing back in, we think, potentially, a right back.
What I'll just jump in and say is I use an app, don't I, that does squads. When this episode's live, we'll do a separate tweet with a tweet with a picture of a squad. I will ask some of you lot for your opinions on what you think we need, etc. And we'll utilise them.
So we think we're in agreement. We probably need a centre back at the very least. We're going to need a right back or a right wing back. Maybe another one at left back, possibly, not 100% on that one. We definitely need a couple of midfielders in there and probably a target man style striker, don't we? Maybe one winger. So, okay, Dan, then you're the man who's got all the lists and looks at all the different little things and whatnot. You always got your big list of targets, especially north of the border. Who do you want us to sign? Who you looking at thinking they'll be a good signing for us?
Well, we were talking goalkeepers to begin last week, weren't we? And there was a couple stood out for us. One was Kieran O'Hara, who left Burton Albion, former Man United. I think he would be excellent. And who was the other one we said?
The one I really like is Connor Ripley.
That was it, Connor Ripley. He's
at Preston North End. He's a son of Stuart Ripley. You might older fans might remember played for Blackburn Rovers back in the mid '90s when they won the Premier League title. Now he started out at Middlesbrough and he's played against us a few times in pre-season games. And he played in one game, I think when he was about 18 for Borough, and he had like the game of his life. He was unbelievable in that game. I think we actually won the game 1-0, but I think we would have won it by 4 or 5 if it wasn't for him. He was brilliant, and he's generally been a really good lower league keeper in that time. I think he was on loan at Salford for a short while this season. I genuinely think it, because he's 29, he's at peak age. I think he'd be a good one as competition for Howard. Norman. So I think he'd be a really good signing. And like you said, O'Hara's one that you'd picked out and was interested in. I don't, Mike, if you've seen any goalkeepers out there.
Well, I mean, between the lines of what Simmo said, he doesn't want someone who's like 33, 34, 35. You'd rather someone younger. And I don't... He's mentioned something about getting someone in on loan, perhaps. So it could well be someone left field that we've never heard of who is getting a full season first team football under the belt.
Possibly. Be interesting to see what he does. I mean, we've got 2 young keepers there already. It's the only thing with that, but there you go. Goalkeeper wise, I think we're sort of all in agreement. We're going to need another keeper to challenge Norman, because I think the 2 young lads probably need to get themselves out on loan and play a bit of football. They've still got I don't know if they've got 2 years or 1 year left on their contract, so it's a bit unclear about that, but I think it'd be best if they were playing football rather than, sitting in the stands every week. So there you go. Defender wise, again, Dan, any particular that stand out for you that you've seen out there?
Not massively at the moment. We've been linked with all kinds of defenders on the old rumour sites. On our sister site on the Cumbrians, I'm actually running a list of every player we're linked with to see A, how much rubbish these sites talk, and B, if we actually sign any of them. We're currently up to 11 players, and we could actually name a full 11 from them, because we've got 1 goalie, 5 defenders, 3 midfielders and 2 strikers. Of those 11, I think there's 1 would maybe be, possible, or maybe 2 so far. But no, I've defenders, what we need is, we've got Morgan Feeney, and he's going to be the best player in League 2 next season, isn't he? So,
yeah.
Not that we're bigging him up or anything. I would like to see an older head, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I don't mean a Paul Huntington age older head.
How about James Chester, been released by Stoke?
I'd make an exception for James Chester.
Imagine.
James Chester.
No way he dropped this level.
James Chester is possibly my favourite loan player. That's how good he was.
That's a good big shout. That big shout indeed.
He was different class, wasn't he?
He was. He was.
I mean, how gutted were we at Tranmere that day when we were told he'd been pulled out?
I remember we were all sitting there like, that's going to kill our season. That is
right, lads. Right? I'm afraid the news is out.
Oh,
Carlisle United have agreed a 2-year deal with Owen Moxon.
And you know what's really annoying about that is, I was just about to say, he's one we could target, so I'm not going to be able to look at.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I was at Annan, wasn't I? On Friday, and Greg Abbott and Gav Skelton were there. I was talking to them on the way into the ground, and I did ask if we were watching him, and they're not very coy, but there's some big clubs been watching him, and
quite impressive, that, isn't it, to get him? I didn't realise he was 24. Obviously, he started out on our books, didn't he? He was in the. I don't think he ever got to youth team level, did he?
He wasn't YTS. No. He was
under 16 level. He was,
yeah.
But he went off. I mean, I'm looking on the website now, and there's a photo of him with Simmo. I can't tell if he's a big lad or not, because obviously Simmo's quite short.
He's a big lad. He's a big lad.
Yeah, he looks...
I noticed it when he was playing.
But yeah,
because he stood out on the pitch to me, which at that level is quite hard to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's not the greatest standard Scottish League 2. There's some good players at that level though, isn't there? So you can find players occasionally. So as you said, bigger clubs have been watching him. So
there was a rumour Sheffield United were watching him.
Breaking news on the podcast doesn't happen very often, does it, really?
Yeah.
That's quite exciting, isn't it? So there you go. Owen Moxon has signed a 2-year deal with the Blues. So that's a first step towards reshaping the squad for next season. Fantastic stuff to see. I mean, he ended up in the Scottish League 2 player of the season, didn't he? Team of the season, I should say. So decent little player, I think it's fair to say. Yeah, so defender-wise, like I said, there's some good players out there. I mean, I was looking for the championship list mostly, but... I'm pretty sure there's some good... I mean, everyone's going to mention Reece Bennett, but I wouldn't go back to him. I don't think...
I'm not one for going back unless you need to make it... Unless there's a real...
Yeah. Got to be good enough, really. I mean...
Someone like Devitt came in and made a difference, didn't he? So...
Yeah, someone who got the club and was there for a long time the first time round. You can get that with someone like that. I mean, it's been mentioned before, but you look at Shrewsbury Town, they've let Ebanks, Landell and Aaron Pierre go. I mean, Pierre's... I want to say he's getting on a bit now, but he's been around for quite a while now, hasn't he? He always really impressed me when we played against him, but again, either of them would be a pretty good signing, to be fair. But then again, injury record-wise, I think for the Tombs, not the greatest, to be fair. So Whether you look at him, I don't know. Any other players you've spotted, Mike, that you really fancy the look of?
Well, Joe Mattock was released from Rotherham, who is he's 32 now, but he was very. I mean, he spent most of his career at Championship level. Obviously, he's a fullback. I don't know if he'll be sort of coming in to more of a centre-back role now. I don't know. Another name that I picked out, though, is Solihull had a left-back with them called Harry Boyes on loan from Sheffield United, who scored 5 goals from like left wing-back for them. And I would imagine that Sheffield United would want to loan him to League Two next season, step up. So with the Greg Abbott connection, that is a possibility. And another one I spotted, he wasn't released, but that, and I'm terrible at pronouncing Irish names, but Ogan O'Connell from Rochdale, the centre-back. He wasn't released, but he's been offered a new deal. But he's always been a good player, and I wouldn't object to him coming in.
No, again, he's one of actually, funny you mentioned Rochdale, because they let Alex Newby go, who's obviously the lad from Barrow originally. And the 2 games we played against, well, especially the game at Brunton Park we played against them, he was excellent. Him and the lad Liam Kelly in the midfield, really, really good players. So I wouldn't mind us having a little look at him. Again, the one question you'd ask is, why have Rochdale letting him go? You're at the similar level to us. That's the one thing that stands out in your head. But then there's other players who, in the past, who've been let go by other clubs at our level, and you think, why are we looking at him? And actually, they turn out to be quite good. So Alex
maybe he's indicated he wasn't going to stay, so they've just not what's the point enough for him.
Yeah, especially if they're over 24 as well, there's no point offering them a deal if they're not going to stay.
Speaking of Solihull, one of the transfer rumour things was a player I'd actually take, and that's is it Joe Sbarra?
Yes, Joe Sbarra. Sbarra, is it?
Sbarra.
Sbarra, yeah.
I don't know if it's a silent B or S or...
Yeah.
But he's a goal-scoring midfielder, and he scores a lot.
Yeah, he's one I'd have a look at, definitely. I mean, you'd think with the Greg Abbott connection there's a decent chance we'll have a look at least 1 or 2 of their players, possibly, just to see whether they're up to it or not. I mean, I'm looking back through the list here now. I mean, you do see the odd players here and there who are good, but I mean, quite often they come out of complete left field. I mean, a couple of years ago, we signed Danny Devine, and I never really I wouldn't have thought ever, why are we signing him? But he did came in. He did a solid enough job, really, when he was here. So possibly one. I mean, I'd love to sign Callum Camps from Fleetwood, but I suspect he's off to
Bristol Rovers.
Bristol Rovers. Sorry, with Joey Barton. Interestingly, Anthony Pilkinson was also let go by Fleetwood. He was a brilliant player, Stockport, a few years ago, but I don't know what's happened to his career. It just never seems to have taken off in the way it should have done. It's one of those players, where you watch him at League 2 and League 1 level, and you think, you should be top end Championship at the very least, with the ability you've got, on the ball, shooting and passing and whatnot. And then they never quite kick on, do they? They never quite. They like being the big man at League 1 and League 2 level, don't they? And then they just sort of slowly drift away. So it's kind of a shame how his career sort of petered out almost, I think it's fair to say. But
well, you mentioned before signings from left field, and so obviously I had a look at Solihull, and I've had a look at Bristol City as well, where Simpson was before here. Coach. And now there's a striker, Lewis Britton, who's 21 and 6'4", and he had a loan spell at Waterford in Ireland this season, where he scored 4 in 12, which is it's all right. We could do with a tall striker. Probably wouldn't be on particularly high wages. It's potentially one of them.
I mean, I'm looking through the list again now. I think I saw someone mentioned somewhere as well. Tom Carroll. Ipswich Town as well as one, he's dropped down quite a bit. I'd be amazed
if we got him.
I would be amazed, but he's a player, who's definitely been linked and whatnot. So there's plenty of options out there, isn't there? I think we're going to have to cut this short a little bit now, unfortunately, because Dan has actually got to nip off somewhere. And we've basically been obviously taken up a lot of the time with the Owen Moxon crack as well, so it's a shame. But in a minute, Dan's going to run through the X-Files section, and then what we'll do is I'll wrap up for this week. So it's a bit of a higgledy-piggledy way to do this week's episode. But we might, whether we come back with an episode next week, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. Okay, Dan, then it's time for the X-Files section.
Okay, this week's X-Blues, not too much with the season just about over. Most of our usual ones feature, though. James Tavernier scored a penalty for Rangers midweek last week. the 4-1 win over Ross County. Obviously, we recorded early last week, so that's why it's on this week's. Also, after last night's unlucky penalty defeat, where Tavernier was a penalty scorer, he's finished the Europa League as the top scorer. I think it was 7 goals with 4 from the penalty spot, which for the right back is pretty incredible. Paddy Madden scored 2 goals, big ones, as Stockport came back up as champions. He scored the only goal in a 1-0 midweek win versus Torquay last week, and then scored in the 2-0 win over Halifax, which combined with Wrexham's defeat, who were needing a shock result anyway. But Madden will be back in the Football League with Stockport. Harry McCurdy, probably our most regular feature this season. Didn't he take the playoffs by storm? Scored both for Swindon in the 2-1 win against Port Vale, the second leg of which is tonight after we've recorded. Swindon looking like favourites to join Mansfield in the final. And Jared Branthwaite got a red card for Everton at home to Brentford in a 3-2 defeat. There was a bit of controversy over this because Richarlison got pulled his shirt in the box and a penalty wasn't given. The ball was punted up and Jared was the last man on Ivan Toney, and I think Toney made a little bit of a meal of it, but as the law is, Branthwaite had to go, so red card it was. And one other last bit, Kedwin Scott, another regular, was named in the National League North Team of the Season for 21-22. No surprise given the performances of Gateshead, who won the league. And that's it for the Ex-Blues this season.
Right, well, that's it for this week's episode. In terms of the next week, I think we're going to have a week off possibly, really, because I'm not sure a huge amount of news is going to come out or anything extra. What we might do is have another look through all the potential targets in a couple of weeks' time and do a few of the little bits and pieces if there's a few signings made. But we might start doing some of the summer specials as well over the next few weeks just to fill a bit of time as well, because obviously we're going to have weeks where not much happens. Obviously we'll have the fixture announcement week where we'll do something then as well. But yeah, so we'll start to wrap stuff up then. And that's it for this week, lads. Thanks once again for joining me. Thanks once again everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.